Hey, this is Eddie Muller. Welcome back to the February installment of Ask Eddie. I am, as usual, joined by my colleague in the Film Noir Foundation, our Director of Communications, Ann Hockens. Hello, Ann. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
And by popular demand, we have a special guest star who is immediately going to cover my microphone, so my sound is going to go all crazy. But I think because I can't let Charlotte and Emily and Milo steal all the thunder. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Tizzy. This is my cat, Tizzy, who has absolutely no idea what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. But as long as I keep petting her, she will be just fine. Right, Tiz? What do you say? This is your close-up, Tiz. You better not blow it. You're never going to get any work if you don't, like, let me down, let me down. This is too weird. Where's the food? Anyway, she has many issues, but one of them is she has no problem being held. This will freak people out, but she has no problem like with this. Look at her.
That's amazing.
She's like licking my hand as we speak. She just has no issues with this stuff whatsoever. But I just wanted people to know that Tiz is for real. She was named, okay, Tiz, you get to go away now. This is going to be a little, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you heard that. She had a little meow there at the end. Very good. Okay, cameo by Tiz. Just so you know, Marie Windsor's dog was named Tizzy as well. I don't know if that was like influenced me to name Tizzy what I did call her, but that was also the name of Marie Windsor's dog. So, okay.
It's a good name. Okay. So our first question is from Joe. If the COVID vaccinations continue as they predict, and we are back to some semblance of normalcy by the end of the summer, is there any chance you'd be doing any of the traditional fall NOIR City festivals? Apologies if this question has already been asked or answered. We'll answer it every time. It's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that is the goal. And I spent some time on Zoom calls today with various people discussing our upcoming plans for online festivals, but the bottom line was we're looking forward to getting back to live shows, because I think that's what makes NOIR City so special, is the enjoyment that people take in showing up, as Bruno Mars likes to say, showing up and showing out. And you know, that's a big part of what we do. So we will definitely be back to it as soon as it's safe.
And this is from Mark from Guildford, England.
Okay.
I know, that's nice. In 2019, I was lucky enough to see a screen of a 35mm print of Michael Curtiz's 1956 film, The Scarlet Hour. I thought the print looked in pretty good shape, but had some missing frames here and there. This got me to wonder, how bad can a print be and still be a restoration candidate? Would missing frames, for instance, disqualify it? And are there films that you know that you'd like to restore where there's known sources are already beyond reasonable repair at this point? P.S. Can I say hello to my pals Eric, Jen, and Eric in San Francisco, who looked after me when I met them at NOIR City 16?
Well, I guess you just did that. Okay.
Exactly.
Very good. And thank you, Eric, Jen, and Eric, for looking out for our friend when he came to San Francisco. Okay, the Scarlet Hour. Okay, so he's in England. So he saw a print of the film that was in England, probably that's on deposit or something at the BFI. We have shown a 35 print of the Scarlet Hour in the States that we got from Paramount that was an archival print that really looked good. So, you know, it doesn't seem like something that's a restoration candidate for us, because I would like to think that at some point Paramount may find their way clear to digitize that in some form. Paramount doesn't do new prints of films, they only digitize. So I think that might, who knows, become available someday. We don't want to do restorations from prints. You really want to find a camera negative or a dupe negative or what's known as a fine grain to work with on a restoration. A bad splicey print is not really viable material for a restoration, but sometimes you're left with no option. So if people have seen our Blu-ray and DVD product from Flickr Alley of Too Late for Tears, there's a whole thing on there that explains how big a project that was and how it was cobbled together from various different sources, including in some cases a 16 millimeter print where there were certain images in the 16 millimeter print, certain shots, where the image was sharper and cleaner than the 35 millimeter. And so we actually opted to use that. And there are, it's interesting, there are scenes in that film, in our restoration of the film, where there's maybe 3 different sources being used within one scene. Like a shot of Liz Scott is from one source, then the reverse angle of Don DeFore is from a different source entirely. And putting them all together and making it look seamless is what this is all about. So our guy at UCLA, Scott McQueen, was in charge of ensuring that all that work went seamlessly. So it's just different cases. And this is a good question because this is how we spend our money, is tracking down these different sources, not wanting to pull the trigger on something until you've kind of exhausted the search for existing material. Nothing hurts worse than spending $85,000 to $100,000 to restore a film and then having somebody say, oh, you know, we have the original negative of that. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. That, even though that's in the long run, that's a good thing. It makes you feel kind of bad that you could have spent your money elsewhere. Anyway, I think I answered that question as somewhat.
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
This is from, excuse me, Patrick. Do you know if the Prowler will ever be in print on disc or available to purchase digitally?
Yes. I mean, it was, of course, we did, that was our first digital publication that we did, oh my God, with VCI Entertainment, which was not entirely expected, but that's what happened. But that publication is now out of print. They did a DVD first and then a Blu-ray. But we are definitely, since VCI has closed up shop, we are definitely looking at adding the Prowler to our roster of Flickr Alley titles and reissuing it. So I think that will be coming soon. If not in 2021, probably in 2022.
Okay. And this one is from Kathleen. Eddie and Ann, who are your favorite female writers of noir fiction? Please name them and recommend specific titles for noir fans to check out.
Okay, well, I will try to run through this really quick. And then if you have any that you want to add that I maybe don't mention, please do. So from the classic era, it's Patricia Highsmith at the top. It's Patricia Highsmith and everybody else, male and female. I mean, there are obviously male writers that I revere, but as I've said, I think previously on other episodes, Patricia Highsmith does not get her due as being one of the great noir writers, period. Gender is beside the point. I mean, she is at the top. Top 5 probably for me in terms of noir novelists, and that would make her the preeminent female writer of noir fiction. I would say Dorothy B. Hughes is in that group. Elizabeth Saxnay Holding, who wrote The Blank Wall that The Reckless Moment is based on. I look forward to reading more of her stuff, but based on just that one novel, she's tremendous. Charlotte Armstrong is terrific. There's a little known novelist. She's kind of in the, there are male writers who are really prolific who are not in the pantheon, guys like Frank Gruber and Harry Whittington and these kinds of guys. And there's a woman named Helen Nielsen who I kind of put in that group. She wrote a wonderful novel called Obit Delayed that I'm very fond of. And I like her. Anybody that you can think of in that classic group that I haven't mentioned? I mean,
yeah, Vera Caspary.
Oh yeah, Vera Caspary, yeah.
Laura and Bedelia. I agree with you about Holding. I'm also wanting to read more of her novels because I've only read The Blank Wall. For Dorothy B. Hughes, The Blackbirder, Ride the Pink Horse, and In a Lonely Place. Charlotte Armstrong is also on my list, specifically for The Unsuspected and The Chocolate Cobweb, which is a really, really great book. And then also the novel of hers, which I don't think is probably as well known, is The 17 Widows of San Suu, which is a great book, and I really, really highly recommend that one. And then there's two novels of Agatha Christie that I consider noir. Actually, there's more than two, but these are the most like that, which is Crooked House and Endless Night, which are my two favorite novels by her, and all her work is dark, but those are extremely dark and highly recommended.
Have those been adapted to film?
Yeah, they did a pretty good one of Crooked House a couple years ago that was surprisingly good. Endless Night is also good. That was done back in late 60s. And it's a good adaptation of it too. And then they're both actually good. But Endless Night I think is a better movie. But Crooked House I liked because it was faithful and they realized they didn't need to add anything. So that made me really happy, since that's been a real problem with Christie's. And I wanted to thank Kathleen for this question because it was my mom's birthday this week. And I was trying to decide what to buy her, and she loves to read mysteries. And so I told her about this question and started talking about Charlotte Armstrong. So I was able to send her The Unsuspected. And then I sent her one of the Hughes novels. I think it was The Blackbirder. And then I also sent her two Woolrich's. I sent her The Bride Wore Black, and then a collection of short stories that included 3 o'clock because I really wanted her to read 3 o'clock. So thank you, because that solved my problem for a
did you know, speaking of The Bride Wore Black, that there is a new hardcover edition of The Bride Wore Black that Otto Penzler just published through his Mysterious Press imprint that I wrote the foreword for.
Oh, great.
So that's pretty cool. I like being, between covers with Cornell Woolrich. Is kind of cool, so that was nice. I'm very gratified that Otto thought of me to write that intro. And speaking of Charlotte Armstrong, there's also her book Mischief, which is really great.
Good.
That is the basis for the Marilyn Monroe movie Don't Bother to Knock, and a short story she wrote that they adapted into Talk About a Stranger, which I think is a really good film. A lot of people don't like it because it's a kid noir, where a little boy is the protagonist. And a lot of people don't like children in their noir. I've come to realize that. Yeah. I get a lot of flack when I show a kid noir on Noir Alley. People are like, keep the kids out of it. We don't want, we want the femme fatales and the hard-boiled guys. We don't want the kids. But when you think about the world through a kid's eyes, it can be pretty freaking noir.
Yeah.
So, I also want to just quickly add to this contemporary women writers of noir. I used to go to this bar in San Francisco called the Ha-Ra Club, H-A-R-A, it was Harry and Ray were the original owners, so it was the Ha Ra Club. And there was a bartender there named Carl, who I really enjoyed sitting at the bar for hours talking about books with Carl. But Carl didn't think that women could write noir or crime fiction at all. And we would get into raging debates about this. And then I sicked a bunch of female crime writers on Carl one night to go in and you know, have his come to Jesus moment about female crime writers. And I think that was Cornelia Reed and Megan Abbott and Krista Faust. And there were a few other gals in there. And anyway, so I recommend all of those people. Also Vicki Hendricks, who sort of led the new wave of contemporary female noir writers, because she, Miami Purity was a book that she wrote that was intentionally a female version of The Postman Always Rings Twice, which is really good. And Vicky's books are all really great. And, you know, Megan writes fantastic books. Krista Faust has a very distinct voice. She's sort of the female Mickey Spillane. That's how she likes to describe herself. Karen Slaughter is another author that we kind of started writing books about the same time. And I really like Karen's books a lot. She's Karin, Karen Slaughter. Anyway, you know, these are just some of the. Laura Lippman. I mean, Laura is known because she writes this series of books with a female protagonist that are more like detective fiction. But every once in a while, Laura does a standalone that's very noir, and she may be the queen of contemporary American crime fiction, and she's good. She's really good. So those are my suggestions for people who want to read female-centric crime fiction.
Yeah, and there's also Library of America put out it's actually 2 collections of women's writing noir, and they're really, really good collections. And several of the books that we mentioned are in there. And then Feminist Press also has a Femme Fatale, which is actually written crime fiction from kind of the classic period as well. And a lot of the books aren't available in paperback, but they're available electronically as well. So like quite a bit of Dorothy B. Hughes's novels and Charlotte Armstrong's novels are available digitally, because it's hard to find, you know, they're out of print in paper.
And people who might be interested in this subject, I also highly recommend, I don't know if this is what you were mentioning, because I don't remember if Library of America was the publisher, but my colleague Sarah Weinman has put out a book. Is that the book you're talking about?
Yeah, she did. She edited those.
Yeah.
She selected the novels. Yeah,
Sarah knows her stuff. She is the reigning authority on crime fiction, sort of, but with her particular slant is giving female writers their due, which is long overdue. And Sarah has just been a total champion of that. And so I highly recommend seeking out those books as a sampler, and then you can figure out, after looking through her stuff, which of those women most appeals to you and you'd want to read.
Yeah, because that's what
thank you, Kathleen, for that question. That was a good question.
Yeah, and that's how I got really into some of these writers, Charlotte Armstrong specifically, was because of that. And also, we have a back issue of NOIR CITY e-magazine, which you can get at noircitymag.com, and it's our women in noir issue. But there's a whole section of that that's dedicated to women writers, and there's a roundtable discussion by some of the contemporary authors that you just mentioned, as well as like an article on Dorothy B. Hughes and an article on the films of her name escapes me. You started with her.
Joan Harrison.
No.
Patricia Highsmith.
Patricia Highsmith.
Yeah, all those women are in that issue. That was pretty great. And Steph Cha. Steph Cha is another one that I would recommend. She's Asian American and is sort of like everybody associates her with Raymond Chandler because she writes about stuff in Southern California, and she was clearly inspired by Chandler, but her books are really good too.
Okay, our next question is from Andrew. Are you aware of any noir stories in film or print that are set in Vancouver, BC? The city where a vaudeville came to die would seem to be an ideal setting for noir.
Okay, this is weird. The only movie I know about that is set in Vancouver is a film from 1937 called What Price Vengeance with Lyle Talbot, about a cop who goes crooked. So it should be kind of a proto-noir kind of thing. But the weird thing is I haven't seen this movie. I know about it because I was doing some research on British quota films. And this is one of those things. And at that time, British Columbia qualified. And, you know, this is where American Hollywood product was not allowed into England. They orchestrated this like a tit for tat kind of thing. In order for US films to be distributed, there had to be certain British films made, you know, utilizing American talent and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, this film was made in, there was a guy named Kenneth Bishop who produced a lot of these movies in the late 30s in Vancouver, British Columbia. So there's a lot of the films set there. Not all crime movies or anything. The one crime movie I know about is this thing, What Price Vengeance. Other than that, I mean, if you're a Pacific Northwest person and you want to see that in noir, the closest you can get to that is Cry Vengeance, the 1954 movie by Mark Stevens. He directed it and stars in it, and a lot of it takes place in Alaska. And it goes up the Pacific coast. It begins sort of in San Francisco, and then it goes up the coast through Seattle and Vancouver and on to Alaska, where the second half of the film takes place. And there's just they're utilizing a lot of Pacific Northwest symbols and imagery and totem poles and all kinds of stuff.
God, I'm gonna have to watch that.
It's okay. It's not bad at all. Mark Stevens was an interesting guy. He made some pretty cool movies. I mean, one of those, Timetable, is a film that I'm kind of is in my head for a possible restoration. You know, it's a heist movie from the mid-50s that is rarely seen, and it deserves better than that. So it's on the list of films that we're searching for good materials to work with.
This is from Dennis. Love these Ask Eddie and Ann videos. I used to live in Seattle for years and loved On 15th Video.
You know what he's talking about?
I managed On 15th Video.
How about
Seriously,
that?
Yeah, God, sorry, I didn't notice. You know, I put these questions on the sheet, and I don't usually, I don't always read them ahead of time. That was like,
okay, that's wild.
10 years. One of my favorite elements of classic noir is the fashion and styles, the overcoats, fedoras, and in particular, the cool haircuts on guys like Mitchum, Bogey, Alan Ladd, Charles McGraw, and Steve Cochran. My question is, what old school products do you think were used to style Mitchum's hair? Would you say he was a Brill cream guy or pomade? Same with Alan Ladd. Anyway, love Noir Alley. Take care.
I'm gonna assume that all those dudes were using wild root cream. You know, that was a big deal. You know, I think Brill cream became kind of a thing in the 50s, kind of with the greaser culture, you know, and all that stuff. And you know, then there was lighter product like Vitalis and stuff like that. But wild root cream was the thing. I mean, it was a big deal, man. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if that's what most of the men at the time were using. And I'm embarrassed. I used to know the wild root cream song because it was a big thing back in the day. You probably can find these things on YouTube or something if you just type in wild root cream. I think it was wild root cream oil or something like that. And I think they got in a lot of hot water because the product made claims that they could not substantiate for the value of using this. Like it did everything. You know, it healed your scalp. It made your hair beautiful. It eliminated dandruff, all this, you know, which is all kind of BS, because if you put a lot of junk in your hair,
you're going to get dandruff.
You're not going to notice the dandruff, right? Because it's all just stuck in your head. So they did go, and it was, I remember distinctly, it was lanolin. That was like the big deal, you know, that it had lanolin in it. So I don't have any idea if I'm right about this, but I just like saying wild root cream. Yes. So I'm going to say that that's what Alan Ladd and Robert Mitchum and all those guys, Dan Duryea, that's what Dan Duryea had in it. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we like looked on eBay or something for like, you type in about old ads for wild root cream. I wouldn't be surprised if you found some actors, you know, giving testimonials, you know, like they all did for Chesterfield and all that stuff. I'll bet you wild root cream turns up. And
they sponsored the Adventures of Sam Spade.
Well, there you go. That's obviously it. That's the winner. Good knowledge, Ann. Very good knowledge.
Because I'm a geek. And this is from Joe. Did any stars from a well-known noir have a secret romance that was not publicized during the release of their films?
This is didn't we answer this question?
We had a similar question last time.
Yeah, well, okay, this one was a secret romance. I think the Bogart Bacall one, which is the most obvious of all time, was not a secret for long.
Yeah.
But I think this question, they're asking more like, you know, the thing that happened with Lana Turner and Robert Taylor when they were making Johnny Eager. You know, that was like a hot and heavy thing. Yeah, because Robert Taylor was married to Barbara Stanwyck, and theory goes that she attempted suicide because of that. You know, there was a broken window and she slashed herself and she ended up in the hospital, and the trade press got a hold of this, and it was like, oh, Stanwyck tries to kill herself because hubby Robert Taylor is stepping out on her with hot new sweater girl Lana Turner. Actually, this happened a lot with Lana Turner.
Yes, it did.
I think Lana Turner and Ava Gardner were the two stars from that era who pretty much were available at any time. And that maybe didn't sound right, but they cut a swath. And
so did Joni.
Oh, well, Jesus. But with Joan, she really did. And, you know, I think it's intense because I think Joan Crawford was basically every single guy that she worked with, she was sizing up as potential partner for sex, you know. And I remember reading Vincent Sherman's you know, some stuff that he had written in his autobiography, and his description of having sex with Joan Crawford was kind of amazing. It was really great. It was hot. It was really, really hot.
Yeah.
I can't help it when I think about The Damned Don't Cry.
Yeah.
And the inevitable when worlds collide moment between Joan Crawford and Steve Cochran.
Yeah.
It's oh my God. I just, the mind reels when you think of this. And so Steve Cochran is the male equivalent of that. I have to believe that virtually every woman he made a movie with, his angle was, so when is this going to happen?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I could we don't have enough time to go into the specifics of all of that. It's interesting. I heard about a good one last week that I don't feel prepared to discuss because I don't have it. It's secondhand information, and I don't want to do that. But it pertained to a romance in a film that I just showed on Noir Alley, which was the last film I showed in January. So I'm going to let people do their research and figure out for themselves what it is that I'm talking about there. So, okay.
Okay. This is from Marty. Oh, sorry. Steve. This is from Steve in Mississippi. Hi, Eddie. Really appreciate your knowledge and work as film noirs are. Please recommend some lesser known Southern film noirs.
From the classic era, I'm going to say Moonrise, which is a film that I love dearly. I don't really think it does a very good job of recreating the Southern milieu, if you will, because nobody does a Southern accent right in that film.
Yeah.
But it's a great film. I would say Among the Living, the 1941 Among the Living, which is a film that everybody wants me to show as often as I possibly can. It's not as easy to get as I would like. I hope I'll show it one of these days on Noir Alley. I've shown it at the NOIR CITY festivals, but Among the Living is a good one. Very Gothic, Southern Gothic style noir. Of course, They Live by Night is set in the South. So I would include that. I'm probably missing something obvious that I'm
House by the River.
Right, House by the River, very good, Anne. House by the River with Louis Hayward. Amongst newer films, I will take this opportunity to sing the praises of Carl Franklin's One False Move, which is a absolutely spectacularly great crime movie. That starts in LA, but soon Billy Bob Thornton and God, drawing a blank on the actor's name now. Fabulous villain in this piece. I hate it when I can't come up with the name. Anyway, that's a terrific movie. So One False Move, I highly recommend as well.
Yeah, and To Sleep with Anger, which is a really incredible film.
Yeah,
and,
good.
And then, oh gosh, what's it called? Jennifer Lawrence was in it, and it's based on.
Winter's Bone.
Yeah.
Winter's Bone, yes, written by my buddy Daniel Woodrell, and I think that's a classic modern noir with a female protagonist that is terrific. So Winter's Bone, excellent call, and thank you for reminding me of that. Daniel would kill me if I didn't mention that. He's like, I know he's a little sensitive about this because he has written so many great books, Tomato Red, and and they labeled him Hillbilly Noir, which really irritated him after a while. He liked that for a while that it helped sell books by being labeled with this noir thing, but the Hillbilly Noir thing did not sit well with him at all. I did an interview with him in the Noir City magazine years ago, and it got contentious because I'm a huge fan of his books, but I was so focusing our discussion on the noir stuff that he just got angry in the middle of it. Like, everybody thinks that's all I do is write noir, and he hung up on me.
Oh my.
We patched all that up, and everything was fine, but I felt his pain at that moment, because he certainly is a writer far above just being dumped in a crime genre kind of thing, although of course I love that. Anyway, so the Daniel Woodrell stuff is great.
And this is from Marty. Hello, Eddie. Love your work and style. Just curious, what were you like in your youth? Playing dice, smoking cigars, or dedicated to school and sports? Keep up the great work.
Those are my two options.
Yeah.
I was either a reprobate or a straight A student. As we know from noir, the reality is somewhere in the middle of all of that. You know, I was an unusual, I guess, youngster in my teen years because I was very artistically inclined and very much a loner. So I would write and draw constantly, but I had a great interest in sports because my dad was a sports writer, of course. But it wasn't until a little bit later that I had an issue. I'm not going to go into it, but something that kept me bedridden for quite a while, and I gained a lot of weight. And so I was very sedentary and I'm making this sound depressing. I don't really mean it to be. But when all of that ended and I finally was mobile, I went at it with a vengeance. And that's when I really started playing sports a lot. And I played baseball and tennis and all this stuff and made up for lost time in that regard. So, I mean, that's really, I was not a good student at all. I was one of those guys who fluctuated wildly, and like I'd get A's in English and history and anthropology, and I would get F's in math and chemistry. I mean, I am not a science guy, I'm an art guy. So that's it. That's all I have to say about that. What kind of student were you, Anne?
I was a very good student because there was an expectation of academic excellence in my household. So it was not an option not to be a good student. But I was in high school in London in the early 80s, and I drank a lot, smoked a lot of hash, had a lot of good times too. But yeah, so I was both. Yeah. And really well.
You want to hear a weird story from my youth? This will maybe explain a lot. I was just not part of anything. I was such an outsider by choice, you know, not an outcast. I was an outsider, you know, and I did some things that got me in trouble in school that are not the kind of things you would expect. I wasn't like a vandal. I had much more ambition than that. I mean, I did stuff that was really beyond the pale. And like putting recording devices in teachers' break room and stuff, and like record. Yeah, I was facing suspension from high school, and in order to avoid this, my counselor made me go to the prom and like set me up with a date for the prom with a girl who couldn't get a date to the prom, right? I mean, that was just so weird. And I remember her name to this day. And, you know, it was awkward. Let's just say it was awkward. And, you know, this was what, 1975 or 76 or something. And anyway, that's enough. That's enough of the personal stuff. So there you go.
Sorry, I was just thinking about my date to my junior prom who left very upset. We'll just
okay, you're going to tell me that story later, but we'll leave it there.
I'll tell you that off screen.
Okay.
Let's see. This is from Don. Will Eddie share the story behind the mannequin in his office? Is it a NOIR reference or just a friendly companion who doesn't talk back? Thanks.
What makes Don think that Doll doesn't talk back to me? I hear her perfectly. This mannequin, is this the one you're referring to?
I believe so.
Okay.
How many do you have?
No, I just have the one. I think I haven't I told this story before? Oh, okay. No, I was driving through Oakland one day. This was a long time ago, and there was a department store going out of business on Broadway in Oakland, and she was in the window, naked in the window, sitting in a chair, and that was it. That was the only thing. It looked like a piece of art, like, what is this all about? And so I just pulled over and banged on the door until a guy opened the door, and I said, how much you want for the mannequin? I think she needs to live someplace else. And I gave the guy, I got some money from the cash machine and gave the guy cash, and doll came home to live with me, I have actually, my wife works as she's a manufacturer's representative. So she has a lot of businesses in the Bay Area, retailers who have gift stores and things. And Doll has actually, been put to work because they've seen, I would take pictures and like, isn't this funny? Here's my new assistant, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then she's actually earned her keep, by still having a career as a mannequin in stores at Christmas and things. She's been like a female Santa Claus at times for some retailers in Oakland. And anyway, it's amusing. We had friends stay one night, a family stay, and the young kid was sleeping upstairs in our house, and he got absolutely terrified in the middle of the night because he realized that there was this mannequin in the room with him, and he had an episode. He had like a panic attack because he woke up and he saw this mannequin staring at him, and he started screaming in the middle of the night. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, I think, the scariest episode of The Night Stalker, with Darren McGavin.
Of course, I know The Night Stalker.
Yeah, is the one with the witches, because at the end, he's in that room full of mannequins and they're coming after him. That actually gave me nightmares. So my empathy is with the kid. And by the way, I don't know if it's a habit. She kind of looks like Darl.
Yeah, I could maybe see that. I mean, this is my father's old fedora that I put on her, but she's got a great, here, I'm going to do a special one-off for our audience tonight. This is Doll's hair. Sorry, hon. Let me just make some room for you. You're like getting a guest starring role on tonight's episode. Here we go. This is her. Let me see if I can turn her around. There she is. There she is. Okay, hold on. There we go.
There you go.
There she is.
Oh.
Let's backlight her. How about that? She's got that great little trendy pixie cut, kind of the Jean Seberg. She's like a brunette Jean Seberg in this pixie cut. So anyway, okay.
She's very real looking.
I thought so.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's uncanny.
She was a little chipped and nicked and all that stuff, so I've kind of fixed her up. She has a little nick right on her lip here that is actually kind of cool. I like it. It adds a little element of danger. She got into some bad business at some point in her mannequin career.
Got scarred for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Morgan. What are some of your favorite film noirs that have non-stereotypical roles for African Americans? I love noirs, but wish there had been more representation for minorities. It's why I love Devil in a Blue Dress, a NeoNoir movie and book series. Yeah, Devil in a Blue Dress is an incredible film.
I am really, really hoping that later this year on TCM, there will be a series of neo-noir films that I will be hosting, and I am, I want Devil in a Blue Dress and One False Move, both by Carl Franklin, to be included, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to get Carl to come on and talk about the films. We did a thing together in Chicago a couple of years ago where we showed both of those movies. He's a great guy. He lives here in the Bay Area, by the way. And but you know, from the classic era, there you know, from Hollywood, there was No Way Out with you know, Sidney Poitier. I don't know if you could say that it's not a stereotypical role in that he plays a doctor, you know, who saves the life of racist Richard Widmark. It is somewhat stereotypical because it's one of Sidney Poitier's noble black man roles. Unlike Harry Belafonte in Odds Against Tomorrow, where he's much more of a noir character because he's this, you know, gambler, this gambling junkie who gets involved in a heist. And there's also the roles that Juano Hernandez played in The Breaking Point, which is not a starring role or anything, but it's a fascinating part because the character did not have to be black.
Yeah.
And John Garfield had this whole script rewritten specifically to make his friend and shipmate a black man, and just have it be beside the point, which was pretty progressive for the time. And of course, Juano Hernandez is also in Intruder in the Dust, where he is the main character in that film, adapted from Faulkner's novel, which a lot of people don't think of it as film noir, but I kind of do. It's sort of a detective story in a way, and has certain noirish elements to it. So there are those films. And of course, I'm going to be showing this month, because it's Black History Month, I'm going to be showing on Noir Alley the 1950 version of Native Son that Richard Wright, you know, who wrote the novel, ended up playing his creation, Bigger Thomas. He played the character himself in this movie that was made in Buenos Aires because there's no way it could be made in the United States because its take on the racial stuff and the miscegenation, my least favorite word, I think, in the English language. You know, there's no way it could have been done in the States, but that is like the missing link that Morgan is talking about here is like, yeah, Native Son, but made not in the United States, made in Argentina. So there are those. And then of course, later on, you know, a lot of these crime movies, they morphed into what were known as blaxploitation films. And you got, you know, Superfly and Shaft and Black Caesar and New Jack City and Juice and Dead Presidents. And, you know, it's vast and continues up to today. So there you go. But from the classic era, the pickings are a little slim.
This is from Glenn in Maryland. What does Eddie think about Anthony Lane's contention the cell phones have proved fatal to the crime film because information can now be instantly shared rather than being withheld in the interest of suspense or loss? Lane, this is, I guess, Lane commented while reviewing I'm Your Woman, which is set in the 70s.
Anthony Lane never had a dead cell phone battery? I mean, that just seems amazing to me. I don't think it's fatal. It certainly is challenging.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to turn this around a little bit. It will be interesting to see if anybody who's like a teenager or even in their 20s today, if they decide to write a period story,
yeah,
like you got to go find a phone. You know, if you have to make a call, you got to go find a phone. You know, it's not just an automatic thing. And I don't really think it's a fatal problem. I think you just have to be, it makes you more creative. And then of course there is the movie Cellular, which was, I believe, the first film that got mileage out of the whole cell phone phenomenon. And that was, I think that was 2004 with Kim Basinger and very early Chris Evans, you know, who would go on to become a big star, and Jason Statham, who played the villain before he was, you know, exclusively heroic in movies. But that was a really clever film about a guy who had to keep the cell phone signal alive because this kidnapped woman accidentally called him as a wrong number, and then he can't lose the connection. And so the battery is weakening and he has to keep the juice flowing in order to connect with her. That was a pretty creative movie. That was Larry Cohen, the infamous Larry Cohen, wrote the story for that movie, which I like very much. So anyway, that's my take on that.
Okay. Okay. So this one is from Brent. I'm loving the Ask Eddie series, especially when you both feel you've gone off on a tangent or think you've gone on too long. It just proves there's so much more to talk about. I kept that part in because I wanted people to hear that part. As a new foundation member, here are a few questions for Eddie. In the second episode of Ask Eddie, you said that you didn't think of neo-noir as separate, but on a continuum with all film noir, and that you're more interested in seeing what do we keep and what do we dispense with over time. From your perspective, what are some of the things in noir movies that have disappeared since the late 50s, and what are some things that they've gained since then? Are all of these changes good, or are there some things from early noir that filmmakers should bring back?
Wow, that is a good question. Okay, the thing that they should bring back, in my estimation, is restraint. That's something that really appeals to me about the original movies, is that they were about the worst instincts that human beings have, but the filmmakers couldn't, in many cases, they could not, be so graphic in their depiction of these things, which I kind of miss. When a modern noir turns me off, it's when the filmmaker loses their restraint. And it's just like, oh, fuck, you got to be kidding me. Like, how bloody is this going to get? How violent is this going to get? That stuff just doesn't interest me. So I'm sorry that we've lost that. What we have gained, and you mentioned that new movie, I'm Your Woman, with Rachel Brosnahan. What we have gained is far more female voices and creators than there existed in the original era. And I think that's all to the good. I mean, it's amazing to me now how many female-oriented noir type of movies and TV shows there are. And that's all good as far as I'm concerned, and anyway, I mean, to me, that's just obvious. And the same could be said for people of color. Now we get to see the stories from that perspective as well, and that's a good thing. Sometimes it doesn't work. I feel it's a little forced. This new show, Lupin, based on the Arsène Lupin novels, yeah. I didn't like that at all. I thought that was a total trying to shoehorn a trend toward African-American leads into a place where it really didn't feel like it worked. I just didn't like the way that show was written. I didn't buy it for a second. But other than that, I think that's a very positive trend in the movies. So that's where I'm going with that.
So this is another question. In your writing and in your DVD commentaries, you often talk about production notes, shooting scripts, etc. I think a lot of people find this fascinating. I imagine boxes full of folders in university libraries and studio archives. Is that how it works? Can you share some insider tips or anecdotes about how you track down and get access to this information, especially for writers and researchers who aren't affiliated with the university? And what's the strangest or most exciting thing you found in one of these files?
Interesting. Who is
That's
this?
also from Brent.
Brent. Good questions, Brent. Really cool. That is exactly how it works. There is nothing in the world for a researcher more exciting than somebody pulling boxes out of deep storage and dropping them on a table and letting you go through them. I mean, that's the absolute best. Okay. Most of this research gets done at the Margaret Herrick Library at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. or UCLA Film and Television Archive, or USC, where a lot of Warner Brothers files are stored. The Harry Ransom Center in Austin, Texas has a lot of stuff. Obviously, the Library of Congress has a lot of stuff. So to access this, you have to go there. You have to travel there and do the legwork, as they say. The most interesting thing that I've encountered in doing this research, I would say it was, and this was very telling and was a hugely important part of the book I wrote on gun crazy, was learning that the special collections at the Academy Library had a bunch of stuff from the King brothers, the producers, that had never been accessioned into the collection because they were the King brothers, right? Which I just thought was so perfect. It's like these con men, these characters, you know, I mean, really, it was never a priority for anybody because the King brothers never had children, right? So there was no offspring to fight for the importance of their papers. Yeah. I think I was the first person to ever come in there and say, I looked on your computer and I think you actually have stuff here that they gave to the library, but it wasn't accessible because it was in special collections where you have to get extra permission to go in and look at it, which I did. And that's where I discovered Dalton Trumbo's draft of Gun Crazy with all of his notes and all of these scenes that were never shot. And I mean, that was fantastic. But beyond that, I found in there, because let's face it, the King brothers were not super organized. Yeah. So it was like it was stuff in a box, right? Yeah. And among the things in the box was all this correspondence that Frank King had with Dalton Trumbo when Trumbo was in exile in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Including all of these checks that they had written to him for work he was doing in secret, all of which were written to to Cleo Fincher, which is Dalton Trumbo's wife's maiden name. She became Cleo Trumbo, but she was Cleo Fincher. And to avoid anybody opening the mail and realizing what was going on, any authorities, there was all correspondence under her maiden name, including the correspondence from Trumbo, which he signed Beth Fincher. He never signed his own name to it. But I read these letters and it was like, went to the bullfights last week. Fascinating. I've got a great idea for a movie. And he basically wrote in this letter the whole plot of what would become The Brave One, which would win him the Oscar, right, for Best Screen Story, which he never accepted because he couldn't do that, you know. So Robert Rich became the guy who won the Oscar, who didn't even exist. Yeah. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that if you're lucky, you can find in these files. And I've found stuff that's totally misfiled. I was looking for things on the movie Tomorrow Is Another Day and discovered all sorts of stuff about Nobody Lives Forever because W.R. Burnett intended to call that Tomorrow Is Another Day at some point. So there was all of this correspondence about the wrong movie in the file. And I tried to get that fixed. Not easy. Not easy to just come in as a guest and say, you've got all this stuff misfiled. Yeah. I am the last person that they want to see when you come up with stuff like that. Anyway.
So where can people buy your book, Gun Crazy?
Blackpool Productions. Boy, you're good at this stuff, Ann. Yeah, blackpoolproductions.com. You can go. That's the only place you can get it because I didn't feel that Jeff Bezos needed more money. And so you can buy it directly from me through that website. So there you go. Blackpool Productions, as in a black pool opened up at my feet and I dived in.
didn't realize that's what that came from.
That's exactly what it came from.
I didn't know that. This is from Chris. Would you consider programming a film noir night at the drive-in? That would be so fun. The Egyptians been programming at the Mission Tiki Drive in Montclair.
I have been asked to do several of those, and so far I have declined, specifically with the Noir City stuff, because honestly, it doesn't fit with our model, because people come to Noir City and they want to dress up, they want to fraternize, all this stuff. And it's like, you're in your car watching a movie in your car. I have nothing inherently against drive-ins. One of the coolest experiences of my life was watching Thunderball at the drive-in, which is like being on drugs, because there's all this underwater stuff in the sky. So it's like, am I on LSD or am I watching a James Bond movie, you know? But it just didn't work. And so part of me is like, I want, when we return to Noir City, I want it to be such a celebration and so special that I don't want to do too much as a stopgap trying to replace that, because I just think it could backfire. You know, I'd rather, let's figure it out. We'll do some online things. But when Noir City comes back, it will come back as Noir City that everybody knows.
Okay. This is from Claire. She has a couple questions. I know these questions are too late for the January Ask Eddie, but perhaps you save questions for later. We do. How would you characterize British noir in comparison to American noir? Do they have more in common with European noir?
My flip answer is that the Brits try to be tough, but they aren't really. But then, let me correct myself. America wasn't invaded. Or, I mean, Britain wasn't invaded, but it was bombed, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were right there. So a lot of post-war British noir is about that experience. It is about the Blitz and having survived, and you know, that's what you know, the whole kitchen sink movement of drama, it grew out of that, out of being in proximity to all that destruction and misery, which is an element that is completely lacking in American noir. I mean, in American noir, the threat is always from within. There is no external threat to America in any of these things, right? And we've proven that we are our greatest enemy, right? I mean, we've proven
Unfortunately so.
Over and over again, right? Which is a big part of what noir is. But yeah, that British noir, I'm thinking of, you know, It Always Rains on Sunday and films like that, definitely have that beaten down, beleaguered feeling to them that is different than what you see in American noir.
Okay.
That's
it. Okay. They seem, okay, so, oh, sorry. I didn't realize that. So this is the second part of it. Sorry. They seem to be more influenced by World War II and the hard times of the post-war period, reflecting the shortages and rationing. Would you agree?
Well, I just did.
Yeah, you just did. Are there any British noirs coming up on Noir Alley?
Yes. I will be showing Brighton Rock. I will be showing The Third Man, and I will be showing Cloudburst, a 1950 film starring Robert Preston. He's a Canadian in the film, but the whole thing takes place in England. And you know, we did show The Long Haul, not on Noir Alley, but I did show it on TCM as part of Diana Dore's Star of the Month thing, which is a terrific film. I love that film.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah, and I showed Cash on Demand, the fabulous Cash on Demand.
Which I love.
Yeah, and Cloudburst is, I believe that is the first Hammer crime movie. It's 1950, and I think that's the first one that Hammer Studios made. I think. I'm not positive, but there's a lot of stuff. You know, what's the one I'm thinking of? The Noose, the one that Carol Landis made over there. Because there were a lot of these movies where it was another version of the quota thing, where American actors would go there and make films. Barbara Payton did one called The Flanagan Boy, I think, or something like that, that was called Bad Blonde when it was released in the United States. Anyway, yes, I will be showing more British noir on Noir Alley. A much easier sell for the TCM audience than the foreign noir, because hey, they're still speaking English, right? When I show the Argentine films, or later in the year, I'm gonna show Cruel Gun Story, Japanese noir, and we'll see how people react to that, you know.
We'll see. We'll hear about it on our page too, so I can let you know. This is from Alan Rossi. Have you ever interviewed director Francis Ford Coppola? Eddie, are you aware when Coppola made the first Godfather that they had a stand-in director on the set in case they had to fire Coppola? Can you imagine Eddie having a stand-in host for Noir Alley? Talk about pressure.
I have met Francis Coppola. I have not interviewed him, but I have met him at various fetes and things in San Francisco. The last time I saw him, it was very gratifying that he watches Noir Alley. Oh, nice. And that was cool. The thing about the stand-in, that reminds me of Audrey Totter told me that she was hired to be Gloria Graham's lady in waiting on In a Lonely Place, because of the tension between Nick Ray and Gloria Graham, who were married at the time, but the marriage was falling apart. And Nick Ray said, Gloria's right for this, but Columbia said, if you guys blow up, we want an actress to step in without losing any time. And they paid Audrey Totter to just not take other work during the time that they were shooting In a Lonely Place. She would have been Laurel Gray. There, Charlotte makes her appearance. Yay! Yeah. Oh, good. Twerk. She's twerking for the audience now. Very, very nice, Charlotte. That's good. She's also, I believe that was, she's scratching your chair. I hope that's okay.
No, it's not. This has been a new thing with her about scratching the couch. We've had words about it.
Nice cameo. Hey, Charlotte, I was trying to set you up with Tizzy, but you were too late. You know, you missed it.
You missed all the fun. Oh, she'd just be jealous and mean.
I'll bet you can't hold Charlotte upside down and scratch her belly.
Oh, no.
Like I do with Tizzy. I'll bet you she would freak out.
Yeah, I'd lose an arm.
Yeah.
Oh, well. She's no, Emily I can pick up.
Oh, there. Oh, I was missing her. I know. I see. She's down there. Okay, very good.
She's been down there for a while. She just decided to stay in the corner in order to see her. Yeah.
Oh, Charlotte, you're perfect. Look at this. She's just got the pose working. Very good.
I know. She's liking it. Okay, so here we go. This is from Steve. I've read that Robert Ryan was a boxing champion in college and a great athlete. Yet in the setup, his character often looks off balance and unsteady in the ring, but not in an obvious theatrical way. Do you know if Ryan was injured during filming, which might have affected his performance, or was he just using his skills to realistically portray an aging stoker whose best days were behind him? Thanks so much for doing these Q&As.
It is definitely the latter. Yeah, he could not look like he was a great fighter. Yeah. He's a club fighter, you know, in that film, and an aging club fighter at that. But also you have to take into account when they shot that movie, the camera equipment was so big and bulky and so difficult to maneuver that all boxing looks a little fake from that era, because you simply, as performers, you couldn't move as fast as you would normally be moving in the ring, because obviously you could when you're just feeling out an opponent, but when it comes to the action and the actual trading of punches, they couldn't do it as fast as it would normally happen in a boxing match, because it wasn't showing on camera. It wasn't reading well enough on camera, which is why a lot of those old fight scenes look a little stagey. And that's why, Robert Rawson had James Wong Howe shoot all that subjective stuff in Body and Soul on roller skates to compensate for that. So you got a lot of innovative camera and jerky movements and everything, but if you watch the actual fighting in Body and Soul, it's actually less convincing than the fighting in the setup.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the guy that fought with Ryan in the setup, an actor named Hal Baylor, he was actually a boxer. So both of those two guys knew how to box. But when you compare boxing of that era to something like what Mark Wahlberg did in The Fighter, he was basically recreating the boxing matches, studying the tape of Mickey Ward's actual fights. And they went out, and the director of that film did something incredible. He just recreated the fights that everybody saw on TV from the same camera angles. He didn't add anything. So the performers, the actors, had to really sell it. And Mark Wahlberg was extraordinary in that movie because he looked like a fighter.
Yeah.
And there was no faking it at all. Anyway.
Okay. And this is from Michael. Other than the subject matter, I know specifically what drew me to the style of noir, Peter Gunn. I was in junior high when it showed on TV and hooked me. Sometime back, I bought the complete set of the series on DVD. After watching it again, I realized how it affected my taste for the look and feel of film noir. You've talked about TV shows that are neo-noir, like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Has Eddie seen Peter Gunn, and if so, does he think the show was an expression of film noir?
Without question. It was created by Blake Edwards, who wrote a lot of that stuff originally. He wrote Drive a Crooked Road, the Mickey Rooney picture. Yes, I mean, Blake Edwards' idea for that was to create a new Bogart character out of Craig Stevens, and it was all based on the stuff, the Private Eye stuff from the 1940s, just updating it and doing it for a slightly new era. So there's no question about that. And if you've seen stuff like, Marvin and M Squad and John Cassavetes and Johnny Staccato,
Yeah.
These are all clearly noir-inspired TV shows. And that's kind of where noir went, was to the small screen. When Hollywood decided everything had to be widescreen and Technicolor to compete with TV, the stuff that we love, all that black and white minimalist crime stuff, all moved to TV. So yeah, Peter Gunn was absolutely in that mold.
This one is from Phil. I have an assignment for you. You have an empty shelf in your bookcase about 24 inches long, and you need to fill it with film noir material. What would you pick? You cannot use the space for any of your own books. You can include biographies, photo-oriented books, or any other types of books or publications. You can include NOIR City anthologies if you wish.
See. Thanks, Phil. I wish I could turn the camera around so that, number one, Phil would see that I do not have 24 inches of available shelf space anywhere in my house.
Me neither.
I have books literally stacked in precarious piles on the floor here. They're everywhere. So, Doll, if you'll excuse me, I had to buy library carts, right? Like you return books in a library on the cart so that they can be reshelved. I have several of these in my office on wheels that I move around. So, I mean, I have, Phil, I got more books on film and novels and than could possibly fit in 2 feet of shelf space. So, I mean, I'm looking at my original Hitchcock Truffaut book, the first film book I ever owned. That somehow is next to Jean Negulesco's autobiography, which is next to a book on Hollywood directors, which is next to Imogen Sarah Smith's book In Lonely Places, film noir and rural film noir. The William Cameron Menzies biography, Foster Hirsch's bio of Otto Preminger, Deborah Alpe's book on Robert Siodmak. I mean, it's just endless. Books on studios, books on character actors, you know, everything. I have binders filled with transcripts of all the DVD commentaries I've done. I have never listened to one of my commentaries, but I have transcripts of them so that when I'm researching for like an intro for TCM, I can go back and pull stuff out of these commentaries that I've already talked about. So I say, oh yeah, I'll talk about this. You know, I just did that when I showed Macau because I did the audio commentary for that. Anyway, it's endless. So do you have a ton of film books or do you have to like...
I have a ton of film books. It's so funny. My dad was visiting with my mother as well. And Brendan, who I was dating at the time, we took him out to a used bookstore, the big one out in Berkeley, the multi-story one that's off the campus.
Yeah.
You know where I'm talking about. And they have a huge film section. And so I was so excited because I found this book on James Wong Howe. And I was so excited because I'd never seen a book on him before. And so I was telling my dad, he goes, do you really need more film books? And it was like, yes, Dad, I need more film books. Now I have a huge amount of them. You never know. And you know, the great thing about them is you can always rationalize that you will need it for research at some point.
Absolutely. I love, there's a great store in Oakland, a rare bookstore that I love to go in and browse because I love finding out of print books from the original era. You know, that's where I got Jean Negulesco's autobiography because obviously that book has not been reprinted. You know, he's not a director. You know, they're going to write 10 books on Orson Welles and Alfred Hitchcock, but Jean Negulesco, no way. You know, they're not even going to reprint that. So those are the kind of books that I really look for because you're going to get something directly from that creative person that isn't an interpretation of what they did. It's them telling you, this is what I did. Yeah. And his book is fabulous because he's a really good writer and he has a feel for the telling anecdote, which is what you want. You know, you want the filmmaker when they recollect making a movie to say, the story I'll never forget when I was making this movie is this. And it may not have anything to do with the movie, but it has to do with the actors in the film or something extraordinary that happened in the production of the film. And that's what I'm always looking for. So yes, and the internet has been a great resource for that because you can find out of print books, you know, and I buy them all. I buy them all.
Yeah, because I always like to, especially with actors and actresses, I always like to, if I can, get one really definitive biography, and if they have an autobiography, to read both because I find it really interesting because I like to hear their own perspective on things. And then it's also fun if you know, like especially I think with Dietrich's autobiography was also kind of really funny because you knew all the stuff she was leaving out. But then but her voice was really there. And like one of the things she said was about working with Bruce Cabot. She said Bruce Cabot was an incredibly stupid actor. And every single time I see him on screen, I hear Dietrich's voice in my head saying that.
That's classic. Okay, I'm gonna tell a tale out of school now, but a few years ago, I was approached by Tempest Storm, right? the most famous stripper in American history. I was approached by Tempest Storm. She wanted to know if I would write her autobiography.
Yeah.
Because this was right after the Tab Hunter book came out that I had written with Tab. And so somehow Tempest must have friends in certain places. She got my phone number and she called me up and said, I really want you to do this. Would you be interested? And I said, Tempest, haven't you written an autobiography? And she goes, oh yeah, but this one will be true. That cracked me up. All right.
All right. So we're getting pretty long here, so we should probably go ahead and wrap up and adjourn next week.
On that note, we'll let Tempest Storm have the last word.
I think that was the perfect place.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And then we will pick it up and answer the rest of everybody's questions. So that was a really great. There were some terrific questions in there that really got me thinking. Both of us thinking. So, okay. Yeah. I don't know exactly what day this goes up, but I'm not going to worry about it. It'll be there.
It'll be there. Don't worry about it.
I love Emily's little face in the corner there. She just looks like the Sphinx sitting over there on the couch, and she kind of blends in, but that's fantastic.
I know. She's so pretty. It's too bad because she has the most beautiful green eyes. Just gorgeous.
Jean Tierney.
Yeah. She's that pretty. She really is. She's a beautiful cat.
Oh, something just startled her.
She heard something from the other room. Okay, well, so we'll see everybody again next week.
Okay, very good. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Bye.